So this was a video I meant to make a long time ago, but I just kept pushing it back in the back burner, and then I forgot about it and I never made it. But so here I am, about to make this video I should have made a long time ago. And I want to talk about consent. Now, talking about this and expressing my thoughts is going to be rather difficult because I think that I'm going to be misinterpreted a lot. And I don't really want to be misinterpreted. So this video is probably going to be longer than it needs to be. But that's only so I can cover my bases and make sure that I'm not misinterpreted. And if someone in the comment section tries to misinterpret me, I'm gonna be disappointed in them. Not me, not myself, but in them I'll be disappointed. So let's talk about consent. So what is consent? Consent is the basic idea, at least in terms of sex and sexuality, of allowing people to perform or engage in sexual acts with another person consciously and deliberately. And I'll just throw in enthusiastically because, you know, a lot of feminists and social justice warriors want to toss that in there. The whole point of consent is to make sure that someone is not being raped, and more than that, to make sure someone at the very least enjoys or wants to participate in the sexual act that is going on. Now, to the mind of a social justice warrior and a feminist, the easiest way to obtain consent, the only 100% clear-cut way to get consent, is to get someone to verbalize yes, to say, yes, I would like X, Y, and Z. Now, to the minds of people who, you know, are not third graders, you know, we kind of understand that you don't really need to effectively communicate every single action that you want to communicate to someone sexually if you're having sex with them or if you like them. It's kind of awkward and kind of silly to constantly ask someone over and over and over again. But I've always erred on the side of this, that honestly, when it comes down to it, if you're trying to avoid going to jail for rape, then like asking to put your penis wherever you want, man, it's a small price to pay for getting a rape charge. I'm just saying, you know, I mean, here's the thing, like, it might be as awkward as it might be. In my personal opinion, if you really want to, you know, check your bases, and if the person really wants to have sex with you, they're probably not going to be taken aback by the fact that you ask them if you could touch them in some particular place, because it would be, hey, can I touch you here? Yes. The only time that it would be awkward or would be strange is when you meet, and I would say there's probably more than these brands of women than they're not. The type of woman that wants plausible deniability, right? This might seem like I'm going off on a tangent. Maybe I should save it for later in the video, the whole plausible deniability thing. I'll save that for later. But for now, when we're talking about what consent is, that's its point, and how you obtain consent is you gotta ask for it. Again, to most people that have social skills, you realize you don't really need to ask for consent 1,500 times for every little action. I personally just don't really see how it's an issue if the two people want to have sex with each other. The two people really are attracted to each other and they really like each other. I don't really see like how that's going to be a barrier. Lots of people say it's awkward. Lots of people say it's bad. But I'm like, if it is, then that means you guys don't want to have sex, because just say, and here's an easy, clear-cut way. How about this? If you really want to give consent in a quick way, just say, you can do whatever you want, and if I don't like it, I'll tell you to stop. Done. Okay. And then when you get to that point, you just say, hey, chill out. Done. If you don't want to say yes 1,500 times. But the whole thing about consent as well for feminists in their ideas, or in their attempt to avoid women being raped, is to make it clear that consent can be revoked, which, you know, should be pretty obvious to most people, that at any point in time you could want to stop doing anything, and sex isn't really special in that regard. I mean, if you're on a merry-go-round and you want to get off, you can at any point revoke your consent to be on the horse and get off. Same thing with sex. And they have a point, I would say, feminists, that if a woman says, yeah, we can have sex, you know, at 5:30, and then after 30 minutes at 6 o'clock, she's like, all right, I'm tired. And 30 minutes, I guess, I don't know. And then the guy keeps going, that then she would be getting raped. I would say that's pretty easy. Like, you can You can at one point want to have sex and then you can change your mind. But another problem that I have with feminists when it comes to consent is that you can't convince other people to have sex with you. And that seems pretty silly to me. I think that it isn't totally possible to to convince someone into giving you consent over time. Now, I'm obviously not talking about, like, browbeating someone, like, come on, man. I just want some pussy, man. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I guess maybe you could form a logical argument. You could say, just give me like 10, 15 minutes. And then she's like, okay, fine. Or he is like that. I guess it is possible, I think, to talk people into having sex. And that should not be considered rape. Even if someone begs you 15, 20 minutes, let me get some pussy, man, like that, I still wouldn't consider that to be rape. I can understand you're not really wanting to have sex, and I guess by definition, you could say that that's rape. But I mean, if you still were like, yeah, let's have sex, and you shut up, you're still not being forced, even if you're being compelled to do so by sheer annoyance. Rape, I think, is, when you have sex with someone who is unconscious. I think that's pretty clear cut. And when you force someone, I think that's even more clear cut. If you hold a woman or a man down, and you force them to have sex with you, it's pretty clear, right? But consent shouldn't be so nuanced, and it shouldn't be that difficult to obtain, especially if two people are attracted to each other. I think, like I said, the only time I would feel that consent is really, honestly, a barrier to having sex with a woman is when she wants plausible deniability. And the reason why I always frame it, or most people frame it, as men have to gain consent from women is because the nature of sex between heterosexual people is men have to convince women to have sex with them via they have lots of money and they're really attractive, or they do lots of really cool things and the woman is interested in that, like playing hockey. A lot of northerners really like hockey players for some reason. I'm a southerner, I don't fucking know why. So that's why I oftentimes kind of frame this in like men, trying to obtain consent from women, because that's just kind of just how the world is. Like, I didn't make it. That's just, I just recognize patterns. But that's why. So, yeah. So, where were we? We're talking about what consent is. I guess what shouldn't or should constitute rape. I think one of the more things that, like I said, the greater point that I was trying to really make here, in particular, was if asking someone for consent is a barrier or is awkward, I would assume the only real reason why, and this is how I express it, I would say, is just if the woman, and particularly for women, want plausible deniability. And you have these type of women who want to be, what's the best way to put this? It's not raped, but they want to be taken. That's the best way to put it. They don't want to be asked 15 times if you can do this, if I can hold your hand. They just want the guy to spring into action and do it, and they just be compelled into having sex. And you have that caliber of women right there. You even have caliber of women who will purposefully tell you to stop just to see if you'll keep going. Like, that is a thing. Now, of course, if you want my opinion on these brands of women, should you interact with them in any sexual capacity? Fuck no. No, you don't. You don't play that game, okay? You do not play the game of chicken rape with a woman like this. If the power of the vagina is just that strong for you, Godspeed. Okay, fine, go ahead. You play with that rape charge. But the only time I would say that honestly asking for consent would really be an issue is if you're dealing with that particular brand of woman, or you're dealing with the brand of woman that wants plausible deniability. Now, a woman that doesn't want to take responsibility for the fact that she did indeed want some penis at that point in time. Perhaps maybe she's cheating on her boyfriend, or perhaps maybe she's a Catholic schoolgirl or whatever that may be. Maybe she's just a regular white woman. I don't know. The point being is, that's the only time I would imagine that would really be a barrier, because if two people want to have sex, then an easy way to put it would just to simply say, yeah, do whatever you want. You can stop whenever you feel like it, or I'll tell you to stop. Done. But here's the main reason why I want to make this video. This is, I think, the most important thing, the most important part of this video that comes in like 10 minutes later. And that is, I honestly think, and I've had this thought for years now, that the whole consent conversation that feminists and social justice warriors have created or made up is mostly just a band-aid for a lack of intimacy, or just a replacement or a pseudo form of intimacy. And what I mean by that is, sex in its nature is the closest thing you can do with somebody. Okay, for the most part. When you put your penis inside a vagina, that's like as physically close as you could be to another person. You're literally inside the woman, right? Part of you is, right? I mean, just literally. I'm not saying this to be vulgar. It's just both physically and metaphysically. That's the closest you can do. Most of the time, you're wearing clothing and you're having sex like you're naked. You're showing a part of yourself you don't normally show to people. You're physically, especially as a woman, vulnerable. Like if you're alone with a man that you have to trust, will not hurt you in any capacity, with usually nobody else around. So that element of trust is still there as well in the nature of the act and the environment that you're in. There's just kind of no way around it. I mean, yeah, you can have sex in public, but we're not talking about that right now. The point is, sex in its nature usually is a very intimate act. And it feels to me that if two people care about each other, no one's going to get raped. But bluntly, if I like you and you like me, and we have sex with each other, that means we both want to enjoy each other's company. We both want to enjoy each other. I'm not using you to get off, and you're not using me to get off, but we are talking to each other, we're loving each other, we're caring about one another, and expressing how we feel about each other, right? So the idea that anyone can be raped in this environment is very silly to me, right? Because we both want each other. So by definition, no one can get raped. Duh. So, but without that intimacy, if you're talking about strangers, right? You're talking about a woman you just met who's inebriated, or a man you just met who's inebriated. They're getting intimate with each other without actually having the strong, tight development of learning about that person over time and spending time with them and learning what they like and what they don't like. That's totally gone in its nature because you're strangers. And so the idea of having consent, saying, yes, can I do this, is a quick form of pseudo-intimacy. It's a quick form of getting to a point where I know what's allowed and what's not allowed. Because with that intimacy, or with that time spent with somebody, you would already know what you can do, what you can't do, what they like, and what they don't like. For example, if you're married to somebody, right? You're married, and your wife is washing the dishes, okay? And then you just pull her pants down, you just start having sex with her right there. I mean, that would be rape in any other situation, right? You just start having sex with someone while they're doing something else. But because it's your wife, it's fine because you have that intimacy, you have that trust. You guys like each other. You guys, I would assume, love each other at that point. The whole point of getting married is to have children, so you have to have sex at some point. But with the whole consent thing being so by the books, yes means yes, and you have to be enthusiastic. There's all these rules. It's a way, I feel, or I've always thought, to replace the idea of intimacy and time invested in people. Because again, if you spend time and you learn about a person, you're going to know what they like, you're going to know what they don't like, you're going to know what you can get away with and what you can't get away with. You can't do that with a stranger, and thus you need an enthusiastic, yes, this is okay, yes, this is fine. And that's how I've always felt that the whole consent conversation has always been. It isn't really about having, and I think another thing is it also kind of cheapens sex again as a pleasurable activity to do with people you don't know or don't really care about, versus an actual intimate moment that you share with someone that you care about, and an experience that you can only share with a few people. You kind of cheapen it and just kind of make it just a thing that you do. And I feel that has always been my opinion on consent. I just never really put it into a video until, well, at this moment, but that's kind of how I feel. So in conclusion, I have to say, consent is, I mean, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, if two people want to have sex with each other, you're going to be able to ask if you can do whatever you want 1,500 times. And it's just not going to stop the woman from wanting to have sex with you. Like, if she's already made that choice, you're not going to ask her 20 times and then she's like, you know what, nigga, never mind, fuck it. Probably not. You know what I mean? But even then, the only reason I would ever find that would be awkward, that would be strange or weird, is if the woman wants plausible deniability. If she wants to be able to say, no, it's just not, it just happened. I just wasn't in control. I just hit the dick, just fell inside of me. I just didn't, like, that's the only time asking for consent, I feel, would ever really be an issue, if she wants that. And finally, point number 3, I think consent as a conversation or as a mechanism in sex by socialist words and feminists is mostly used as a way as pseudo-intimacy. It's usually a way to replace the time and spent with someone learning the person and respecting that person and learning what they like and what they don't like over time. I feel that that is where consent, and that's why consent is so important, so strong. It's a way to replace that time spent, with just quick yes, yes, no, no. That's how I feel it is, and I feel like it kind of cheapens sex. Now, that isn't to say that consent is not important. Of course it is, because you don't want to go around raping people. But it is to say that I feel like that conversation of yes means yes, that kind of consent, without any nuance into it, without any degree of intimacy into it, that is kind of what I'm trying to focus and highlight on. So, those are my thoughts on that. With that being said, man, I just hope you guys enjoyed today's video. And if you did, man, go ahead and click the like button. Yeah, shoot, go and click that subscribe button. Comment in the comments below. As always, you guys have yourselves a great day. I'll see you cool cats soon. Adios.